answer is his critique of pure reason. Der reinen Vernunft. So Rhine, remember the river of the Rhine means pure, right? So pure reason, basically. So the critique of pure reason. And in this, he tries to give us an answer by saying that it's the mind that structures our experience, and in that we end up with these categories. I mentioned first, everything has to occur in time, and everything has to be in space. Remember that part of the approach that Jung gives us concerns synthetic and analytic judgments. A proposition is analytic if the content of the predicate concept of the proposition is already contained within the subject concept of that proposition. You might say, hey, if you're going to phrase it that way, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. My suggestion was, remember, this is, if it's analytic, it's old news. We already know this stuff. So in a sense, it's the definition. And so basically what they're saying is that, a horse has 4 legs, right? All horses have 4 legs. Well, in a sense, if you were asked, what's the definition of a horse? You would say 4 legs, right? That's part of a horse. So you would see that the content of the predicate concept of the proposition is already contained within the subject concept. That's what that is, right? So analytic is definitional, and synthetic is essentially all bodies are heavy. That's interesting. He thinks that's synthetic. Synthetic judgments are adding something to a concept. So it's new information. So analytic information is old stuff that we already know. Synthetic is something new that we're just learning at that moment. And of course, you can't have a priori knowledge. It must be analytic. If you have a priori knowledge, because new information, it's new. I don't know something about it before it happens, says David Hume. Well, so Kant has to figure out how do we explain this, and it's going to be through time. If we think about it, everything experiences time, even just ideas, and space if it has shape. So if anything has shape, even an idea in our mind, we think of an idea that has shape as taking up space, even if it's only abstract space, right? But in any case, if it has shape, it has to also take up space. That's what it's doing when it has shape. But then he goes on to argue that there's a whole bunch of categories. I don't know how many I put, but 12. He likes 12. Remember, Aristotle had 10 categories. And for Aristotle, those 10 categories included, number 1, substance. Everything has to have substance for Aristotle. And then you have quantity and quality, modality, all this kind of stuff. Well, that's what we're going to get from Kant. But the big difference, this is the Copernican revolution now, is instead of Aristotle saying all the things in the world have these categories, Kant says, remember, we can't know the things about the objects in themselves. The thing in itself is noumena. We can't get there. So how do we know all these categories? Our minds are the ones that structure our experience. So we're not finding out stuff about the things out there. We're finding out about the way our minds structure the phenomena that we perceive. Right? So, the a priori is our minds. The structure in our minds puts everything in these categories. And as a result, it really actually solves a lot of the problems that the Greeks had. the Greeks couldn't figure out how could you have one thing that's also many parts. That just hurt their head. You can see them, struggling with that, right? It's a conflict. We don't have a problem with it because we realize, well, everything we experience is a unit, whatever unit. I have a whole class. And by the way, I checked, all 35 of you are still here, even if you're never here. Some of you, right? Normal. This is normal, right? But how do I have a whole class? I have a whole bunch of unique students. Not a problem. Everything. Table is one table, but it has many parts. Everything we experience, we impose the structure of having one thing, but many parts. The universe, one thing, many parts. Everything, no problem. It's not a conflict. It's not like, well, the thing is one thing and has many parts. Can even solve, the cause and effect relationship. We impose that kind of structure on our experience. This thing happened first, and then it caused that. Can we examine it a little bit better? Sure, of course, because we might not find out that there is that causal relationship. But we can study that, and we know that in our minds we expect there to be cause and effect. So everything has unity, plurality, totality when we're talking about quantity. And when we're talking about quality, everything is either real or it's not, or there's limits to it, right? Of relations, everything is either inherent in something, it's cause dependent on something, and it's part of a community. I don't know if you agree with Kant in the way he breaks these up, but notice this is how he's going to resolve that. Modality, right? There's another. So he comes up with these, and of course the critique is a description of all of these. And by the way, his own contemporaries read this book, or at least tried to read the book, and they could not understand what the heck he was talking about. So Kant went back to the writing desk and came up with the prolegomena. Prolegomena to any future metaphysics. So before, there we go, just here. Notice it's old enough. He's long since dead, etc. You don't have to worry about paying. If anything, if it's a new translation, the translator might want, fees, and so on. But the book is here for free, obviously. Introduction. But Hume's, so he's talking. This is Kant talking about Hume. People didn't understand his book. His book fell dead-born from the press, he said, right? But he's the one that introduces this problem. And I openly confess, the suggestion of David Hume was the very thing which many years ago first interrupted my dogmatic slumber. So you can see where that phrase, that he woke him up. So Kant was woke. Just so you know. So hilarious, right? So he redoes his work, trying to make it easier for people to understand what he's doing. He's trying to explain the distinction between analytic and synthetic judgments, and what's common to all of our analytic judgments. It's Aristotle's law of contradiction. Thing is what it is, and not another thing. So there's commonalities. Empirical judgments are always synthetical. So this experience, I'm just seeing it now. It's empirical, right? And so it's synthetic, etc. And this is where the 7 plus 5 comes up. I think I mentioned 7 plus 5. That's, if you see people refer to 7 plus 5 equals 12, they're keying you in that they've read Kant. Because he's just picking any old addition, but when someone else picks 7 plus 5 equals 12, they're telling you, hey, I've read Kant too, right? So there you have it. It's kind of like a cocktail party reference, right? Make sure you know that. What other ones does he have? Das Ding an sich. That's actually just German for what Locke says about the thing in itself. You can't know the thing in itself. So, is metaphysics at all possible? How is he going to do it? He's going to say, yes, we have the a priori, and it's the structure of the mind. How are synthetic propositions possible? To all that which thou provest me thus, I refuse to give credence. Well, wait a minute. How do I prove anything then? How is pure mathematics possible? How is pure natural science possible? How is metaphysics in general possible? How is metaphysics as a science possible? So these are all related questions that he's going to try to answer. And the world basically considers that he succeeds in doing that. And I wanted to get to, once he gives you the categories, there they go. So this is his Prolegomena, which he writes before after the critique, which kind of fell dead born from the press too, basically. But once he's done this, then he goes back and he writes still another book called The Critique of Practical Reason. The first one is pure reason, just abstract reason. Second one, practical reason. How do we form critiques, or how do we form categories of practical judgment? And so he's got categories again, but they're slightly different because of the difference in focus. And then we also get to morality. And this will be actually one of the things you might have heard about Kant. I don't know if you've heard about Immanuel Kant before, but one of the things a lot of people are very familiar with is his concept of the categorical imperative. So when he talks about morality, he argues that our minds structure our perceptions the same as we do shapes and cause and effect and everything else. Our minds will impose this on us. And it imposes a morality on us. And as a result, when you're looking at a particular situation, a moral dilemma, for example, where you might want to try to figure out what's the priority here? I've got a dilemma. I should do this or this. Well, maybe I can't figure out the right answer. Kant says you do know the right answer. It's an imperative. Categorically, the mind will know what the right thing to do is. But our problem, and this is critique, Kant, critique of judgment. You want to look at the whole book? No, it will take, let's go this way. By the way, I think Dr. Ellie Anderson, here's a link to one of her videos. She's very, very good. I highly recommend listening to her every so often. The Critique of Judgment. So this is morality. And it's going to give us this idea that you actually do know the right thing to do. Think about this for example. And by the way, it also applies to aesthetics as well. Bonne chance, Manu. That means good luck. En français. I don't know why. Why did I go to French? I don't know. It just happens. Well, a good trade. Oh, he left UK. There we go. So this also applies to aesthetics, right? Yeah, I don't know why. I think I asked at one point, is there a most beautiful song? And we also talked about, is there a most beautiful arrangement? And we talked about the golden ratio, right, and all that. But if we talk about the most beautiful song, yes, we can actually find the most beautiful song in a category. How do we do that? Well, usually we have a panel that votes on it, and they award the Oscar to, and yes, occasionally you'll get an Oscar going to something like, it's hard out here for a pig, or something, I don't know how Hollywood did that, but they did, right? For some reason, politically, I don't know that happened. Who else gets it? Usually it's associated with the best movie. Who also, a panel of judges will decide who gets the best movie. I don't know if you ever feel like those folks that give the Oscar to whoever are full of whatever, right? They should have given it to this movie instead. Whatever. In fact, of course, that's why the Sundance movies, what are they called? The Sundance Festival or whatever.
Festival.
Yeah, because he hated the Oscars, so he started his own festival. We've got the French have a festival, right? For the same
Cannes
thing.
or whatever.
The cup, what's it called? Cannes?
Yeah,
Cannes Cup?
CANNES.
Frankly, I think Amelie should have won an Academy Award. Amelie, I think, came up for 5 nominations